Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tim Gaither podcast. It's Wrestling Wednesday. My guest today is Coach Al Price. Coach Al Price was coach of the Powerhouse teams of Bishop Miege, late 80's and early 90's. And it's nice to have you on here, buddy. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to finally figure this out. It's freaking difficult sometimes. Zoom is, or we're on Yardstream, but it's not a perfect science. You know, that's yeah. So
well, you're also dealing with an old guy here who's not real good at technology, so you're definitely at a hindrance there.
I was telling you, I got this fancy microphone, and when I plug it in, I can't hear my guests, so I don't know how damn good it is.
Sound like you overpaid.
Yeah, I think it's operator error. So I noticed that you told me that you coached at Bishop Miege for 6 years, which was a little surprising to me. I thought you were there for a lot longer than that for some reason. Where else did you coach?
Well, I had coached in Iowa 3 years prior to that, and then I got out for about a year and went in to private business. Then just got the itch to be back in education and went back to Northern Iowa. Excuse me.
Okay.
Went back to Northern Iowa and got a GA with the wrestling program there. And then was there for about a year and a half. Then took over at Ellsworth Community College for a year. And then from there, I came to Miege for 6.
Okay.
So I was around the block there for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your own career, your own wrestling career.
Well, you know, it's not really all that stellar. I grew up in Iowa and wrestled in a small town 1A school in Iowa. And I was a 2-time section champ and in districts both years. My junior and senior year, I got beat by the eventual state champion 2 years in a row, beat me on decisions both times. And I was at home, or I was in the stands watching him win the state title and kick other people's butts worse than he kicked mine. That's where it goes. It's like, when I look back on it, I didn't have a very good wrestling coach. He didn't know a lot. And that kind of was one of the things that when I got into college and realized, hey, I'm learning a lot of stuff here. It's like, I realized my coach was a nice guy, worked us pretty hard, but didn't know a lot. And it was a different era in wrestling where wrestling was more of a beat the hell out of the guy kind of deal versus there's so much slick technique right now. You just sit and I'm in awe with what these kids do nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's so I learned a lot from the time I left high school, well, till I quit coaching. I learned every day I was in a wrestling room. So
what? When was that? Was was Gable? Was he already?
That was right at the end of Gable. I graduated in '73, so he was just leaving. He was doing the Olympics in '68 or was it '72? What was it? I don't know. But anyway, '72, and and then he went to Iowa after that. And so I was right there, and he was kind of I wrestled Iowa State, and we had the Predicament newspaper in Iowa was the information for wrestling, which it still is, clear back then. And you got your Predicament, and you went to how'd Iowa State do. It's not like today you can go online and find it, watch it live or track it on Track Wrestling or whatever, the Flow. Okay. But then you had to wait for the results to come out in the newspaper. And some newspapers like Des Moines Register covered wrestling really well in Iowa because Iowa's a great wrestling state.
Yeah.
And you could get the high school scores out of the Des Moines Register as well as the college scores. So you had to wait till the next day to find out how Iowa State did. And back then it was Iowa State was the big gun then, and Iowa was basically nothing. So,
okay. Yeah, I find it interesting when people complain about like Flow or anybody else that does, wrestling when the stream doesn't work or whatever. I'm like, do you realize that I used to have to wait a month to see how people did at the World Championships to get my USA Wrestler? I mean, You had no idea how these guys did, and if they didn't win it, you didn't hear anything about it.
Well, even when I was at Miege, you still got your news through the newspapers and however you could get it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was a total nerd about it. I've had Eric Aiken on here, and I used to call him. I'd be about 10 or 11 years old and ask him the results of the duel. And he was nice enough to humor me about it. And he'd sit there and talk to me and answer all my questions. And it was funny when I did the podcast with him. I felt like I was 11 years old again. Like right before it happened, I got so nervous. I'm like, dude, Eric, his family. It's not like, but all of a sudden I was 10 years old again. Of all the great teams you had, because you had a lot, and if it wasn't for Arc City, you probably would have won state a few times. Because you always had you had some great teams. Which one would you say was your best?
Well, the 86, 87 team was probably the best. We went 15-0, and we won every tournament except for Coffeyville. And that year we lost to Derby by 1/2 a point.
Oh, wow.
And Derby won 6A, and we finished second in 5A. But anyway, we lost to them by a 1/2 point. That's the only second play, or other than during regular season, was the only thing and I was looking at some stuff. I had to go back and scour through some stuff because I didn't want to be scootering up on dates and that stuff. So I used to make these things called year in print, and the Sun newspaper down there just loved us. They put stuff out on us every week for Miege wrestling, and it's like I got booklet this thick every year for the kids with all the newspaper articles. And I was reading one article where it says the only loss on Miege's record this year is at the Coffeyville tournament. I said, I'm thinking, loss? We didn't lose the tournament. We got second by a 1/2 a point, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So, but it was kind of funny. The newspaper said our only loss on the season was the Coffeyville tournament.
Yeah, so, that stings a 1/2 a point too. My senior year, we lost state by a 1/2 of a point to Wichita West. And then I've got to have him on here, Jeff Watkins, because he came to I'm a comedian. I think you know that. And he came to one of my shows and was telling me that he jockeyed to get a point put back on because they lost one for unsportsmanlike conduct. He's telling me all these things. He's telling me he's tight with the ref and that we thought kind of screwed their 103-pounder at Derby. And I'm sitting there like, I don't want to know this stuff, dude. It's taking me a fair amount of time to get over all this stuff.
Well, there were several instances at Miege where we either won by a point or lost by a 1/2 point. My second year there, the first year we were 21st in state. We took 6 kids to state, and nobody placed. And the next year we went to state, and we ended up 4th place with 70.5 points, and campus had 71 for 3rd.
Wow.
So we were that close to a 4th state trophy out of 6 years I was there.
Wow.
So
yeah,
I was pretty happy with what we did.
You mentioned the Overland Park Sun, and I don't know why this memory popped into my head, but some of the stuff they would, a lot of times the reporters weren't like wrestling people, and they would just, I remember them, I went undefeated my senior year, and I remember them putting in the paper, they were like, because I didn't pin a lot of people. I think I had 7 pins my senior year, which isn't a lot for going 30-0. And I remember them putting in the paper like 7 pins for the season. And I'm like, I did a lot more, like, of all the things you could have said, why did you make it sound like I couldn't pin anybody? Which, but
yeah, a lot of newspapers are like that, though.
Yeah,
you gotta kind of educate them as you go along.
Yeah. And another thing too, I remember they interviewed me one time, and I was all out of breath, and they literally quoted me exactly the way I spoke after the turn, and I wasn't like talking correctly because I was tired. And they wrote it exactly like I said it. I'm like, you guys are writers. You can make me not sound like a freaking meathead idiot.
Oh, funny.
Anyway, who else was on? Who else was on that 86-87 team? That was
that was. See, Sonny was at 10. No, Sonny was at. Let's see, what was the weight class then?
98.
98. Sonny was at 98. Gons was 105. Gassman was at 12. Let me look here. I can't. Okay. Eric was at 19. Carl Laughlin was at 26. Then Pastrana was 32. Fitzgerald was 38. I think Fitzhugh was 45. 55 was Smith. 67 was, or no, yes. 67 was Mike Medina.
Okay.
And then 85 was Tim Mckee and heavyweight with Carl Scavuzzo.
Okay.
And if Mike hadn't have got his knee hurt in football, he probably would have been able to certify at 55. And because he wrestled, or Tim Mckee wrestled 67 before Christmas, because Mike technically wasn't eligible because of his transfer till after Christmas. But he hurt his knee, and we couldn't get him certified for 55, and they would only certify him for 67, no matter how much I begged and pleaded. But anyway, if he'd have been able to go 55 and Tim 67, and we had another kid we could have slid into 85 that was decent. I mean, he would have qualified for state. But anyway, there would have probably may have been a different story too. But that was a pretty loaded team. There's a bunch of good wrestlers, good kids, and they all hung out together. That was probably the biggest thing on those teams that were really good, is that they were like brothers.
Yeah.
They did everything together.
Tim Mckee is Colin Mckee's older brother?
Yep.
Okay.
Tim wrestled 3 years at Sumner Academy, and then Colin came to Miege as a 9th grader, and Tim decided that he was going to come too.
Okay.
So, and I had a lot of good fortune in the fact that when I came to Miege, we had good assistant coaches. And when you have a good assistant coach, doesn't always mean they're great technically. I mean, we had one guy, Charlie Pierce, who could repeat anything technically that was spit out and be very convincing to kids. And he could even convince me. And but he was our statistician guy, and he took care of all that stuff. Bob Van Maren was our 9th grade coach. Bob ended up being the superintendent at Bonner Springs.
Okay.
And anyway, he was our 9th grade coach, and he was great at fundamentals with the 9th graders and keeping the kids in the program. Yeah. I look back at I knew we had a lot of kids, but I looked at our stats books we give out every year too. And we had a freshman team with like 35 kids on it.
Wow.
And then our JV had another 20, and our varsity had another 20 some. So we ran 75 kids to that room every night, and the room was about the size of a closet.
Oh wow!
It was 2 mat widths, which were about 12 to 14 feet. So we'll say 14 feet. So it's probably 28 feet wide, and it was probably about 40, 50 feet long. And that was the size of our wrestling room.
Huh. Yeah, we had a small wrestling room too, and it used to get so hot in there that water would drip off the ceiling.
That thing would just be cooking in there.
Yeah.
Especially after you got in there and everybody started sweating and getting their body heat going too. But I always told the kids there's a little town in Iowa called Lisbon. I'm sure you've heard of Lisbon, Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have a room that's one met, and they're perennial state champions in Iowa.
Yeah.
So it's not what the room is; it's what's in the room that matters.
Yeah, I grew up in the Shawnee Mission West wrestling room, kids and everything, and I used to look at those bricks, that they had the state champions on, and I always wanted my name on one of those, and I finally got it up there, and then like 3 years later, they knocked down the wrestling room, and bastards.
Did you get your brick?
I did not. I had no idea they were doing it. I probably would have gone and got my damn brick had I known.
Yeah, I'd gone and knocked the brick out of the wall myself.
Yeah. Oh well. So that would have been Aiken's sophomore year.
Yep.
Did you know, speaking of freshmen, what you had in him when he first came? Did you know who he was and all that already?
Well, I'd heard about him, and I guess the thing that impressed me most when I heard he was coming was that I don't know if you go to Oklahoma State's intensive camp. He spent, I don't know what, maybe it's a 2-week intensive camp at Oklahoma State as a 9th grader. And I thought, I'm pretty impressed. The kid, 9th grader, will do that,
Yeah.
But when I met his dad, I understood how he did it. John's a tough guy, and he's a saint, man. When I got Eric, I got John, and that was a big help. And any coach knows that you need those kind of guys like John Aiken out there to be supportive and to help do things and run things and be somebody, especially the way the rules were back then. I mean, I don't know how many times I went to the 80's office, and the 80's says the state called and they want to know about this and that and this. And I'm like, man, I didn't do anything. I said, especially when all those kids started coming to Miege, it's like, I didn't do anything. I did nothing. I said, I didn't talk to them. When their parents talked to me, I talked to them. I never approached the parents first, and I was I wasn't a very well liked person in the EKL area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I could kind of tell that some of the guys didn't. Lindsey Ball, he's a great guy. I mean, a nice guy. He's a competitive son of a gun too, And he just, when we got the Medina boys, Gons came as a 9th grader, and there's another case. Johns came as a 9th grader, and Mike wanted to follow him. Mike wanted to come too, because there was something happening up there. And so Lindsey really just hated me. I think truthfully just hated me and thought I was, trying to cut his knees out and anything like that. But the same year I got all those kids in, I lost Hossback and Tremonti, which were state qualifiers for us. And
now Lindsey
Hossback went to East. What's that?
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask. Now, Lindsey Ball, was he a Blue Valley guy?
Yeah, he was the Blue Valley coach.
Okay.
His assistant, Randy Lowe.
Okay.
So Lindsey and Randy were, it's a hell of a coaching staff right there. 2 really good coaches.
Yeah.
But anyway, where was I going with this?
I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you because I remember the name Lindsey Ball, but I couldn't remember, and then it clicked that he was a Blue Valley guy, so that's probably why I was mad because those guys came up in the Blue Valley Kids program.
Yeah. Well, I found this out a little later, but Eric came within a hair of going to Blue Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason why John brought him to Miege is because I was an Iowa guy.
Nice.
So thank God for Iowa.
Yeah. Well, I have nothing but great things to say and good memories about John Aiken. He, we didn't have a lot of money when we were kids, and we went to we didn't go to a lot of freestyle stuff because it was expensive. And he paid for either me or my brother, one of the two, maybe sponsored it through his construction company, or I don't know, but he paid for one of us to go to this pretty expensive camp before Southern Plains Regional, and we both ended up doing pretty well, so that was cool. But I just think the world of John Aiken. I hope he's doing okay health wise. I know he had a little bit of he had a heart attack and everything, so I would love to get him on here, but I haven't been able to yet. But I would love to pick John's brain about a few
John
things.
would have stories, man.
Oh yeah, he had the best laugh, and
That big old
yeah. You always knew when John Aiken was laughing.
that big old mustache all the time.
Yeah,
Reminds me of who's that actor? Sam
Sam,
Elliott. Like Sam Elliott's mustache.
yeah, he sure did. And
Yeah.
after my senior year, I told Eric this story. We went to a couple freestyle practices, and I remember John in front of the whole team being like, "I'm glad you're here. What do you want to do? What are your goals?" And I was like, I was trying to be all cool in front of my friends. I'm like, I don't know. I don't even really know if I want to do this kind of thing. And the look of disappointment on his face haunts me to this day.
He was expecting, I want to be a national champ, or I want to go to nationals and place.
Or Fargo and kick some ass. And I'm
yeah.
like, I don't know. And he's just like,
Well, there's many times that in the summertime, John had a van, and on Saturdays it was like, I'm going to be at Miege at 6 a.m. If you want to go to the tournament, get your butt there. We'll load you in the van and we'll go. And that's how our kids, a lot of our kids, would get there. You know, because in the summertime it was even illegal for me to transport kids to tournaments.
oh really?
It was they tied our hands so badly, it was sickening. But it was like I said, I was fortunate. I had a good coaching staff when I came. Another guy I didn't mention is Brad Byard. He was our comedian coach. Okay, he was the joke of the day guy. You know, kept things light for the kids. And of course, I was the hard ass. But anyway, Charlie Pierce used to say, "Yeah, I have to go behind Coach Price and put the pieces back together after he's ripped kids apart."
Yeah.
So, but there was a great staff, and they eventually, like, Bob moved on and Brad moved on, and I had been at Northern Iowa, and I had been up there when Paul Kramer was wrestling, and Scott Leonard and Larry Luttrell, and a whole bunch of the other guys that came down to Kansas City. And when they came to Kansas City, it was like, "Hey, guys, would you like to still be involved in wrestling?" "Sure." Okay. Kramer was a key. He came down, and originally he was going to be on the high school staff. But the state stepped in after he did summer stuff and says, he can't be on your high school staff or all those kids will be ineligible. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck? Sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, I got to watch my lips here. But anyway, so Kramer couldn't do the regular season, but he was everything else. You know, he ran the spring program into the summer, and that was really crucial in keeping our kids on the mat and getting all their mat time. And I mean, look, you got a guy like Paul Kramer who finishes 6th in the 88 Olympic trials, you know, coaching your kids. That's not a bad deal. Yeah. You know, and then Scott Leonard or Larry Luttrell came down first. It's kind of funny because I went to school on opening day, you know, Sarah, all this stuff they do with workshop and stuff like this. And this girl gets up and she says, "Yeah, I'm Shelley Luttrell." I go, "Luttrell? That name can't be Larry Luttrell." And by God, she was the home ec teacher at Bishop Miege, and they had moved to Kansas City. It's like, oh, gore. And so that's how we got Larry on staff. Okay. And then Larry hired Scott Leonard to come down and work with his construction company. So that's how we got Scott on staff. And so I was able to construct a pretty savvy staff that had some good wrestling knowledge and background. And we were all young then. I mean, heck, I was only 29 at the time. Wow. You know? And I was thinking about that. I'm thinking Eric's coaching right now at 40 something, and that's the middle of my career. It's like, I coached for 40 or 38 years. And I told some kids one time, I said, yeah, I've been at this 48 years. I did 10 years of competing and 38 years of coaching. They look at you like, oh, you must be made of stone or something, because you're a fossil. So,
Yeah, you mentioned that you were kind of a hard ass. Do you remember throwing Sonny Fight out of practice?
well, I mean, we're doing technique, and we, bring everybody in on technique, and Sonny lays down on the mat like this, and he goes to sleep. Now, Sonny is the most laid back guy, and sometimes I wondered if he had a heartbeat. I mean, and he kind of moves slow. He's kind of always a slow mover. His walk, if you watch him walk today, he kind of walks kind of slow, and he was sleeping, and I woke him up one time, and then he falls back asleep. So I just grabbed him by an arm and a leg and walked over the door and threw him out in the hallway. He tells me that story all the time when I see him.
Yeah,
So,
I like Sonny a lot. He's a good dude. So I was gonna go through this little list here, and I'm sure I'm leaving some guys off, but these are the guys that I grew up going to. The EKL was one of the best tournaments ever. I mean,
yeah, it was a tough tournament.
I used to go in like 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade with a kid named Derek Lane, and I loved it, man. I mean, the energy in that place, and there was always good matches, and there would always be guys that you're like, well, where's Mccracken or whoever? And they're like, he's on the backside. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
How's that guy on the backside?
I was looking at that. Mccracken was a 25-pounder, and his problem was that it was like, I forget who it was. Maybe it's Gons or Sonny, or maybe it's Eric was at 125. And you're thinking, can't get through Eric. Mccracken was an anomaly. He was a kid that came to our summer program, and I understand that he almost wanted to come to Miege too. But if he comes to Miege, I don't know where you put him.
Yeah.
He's right in the middle of the murder's row.
Yeah, he was a freaking stud, man. That guy started wrestling when he was a freshman. He tied he tied Sonny as like a sophomore, and he beat Kevin Stewart. And his very first year of wrestling, which was he won a kid state title, and the guy he beat in the finals was a kid named Tiger Lowmaster, who was a badass. And I'm like, you beat that guy your first year? Do you realize how good Tiger Lowmaster was? And I don't know if he did realize how freaking good he was. But anyway, so these are the guys that I remember and looked up to when I was a kid. I didn't really know Mike. He was a little older than I didn't even realize Gons had an older brother. And then I was talking to Gons, and he was telling me how freaking good Mike was. And,
Mike was really good.
Yeah. I mean, telling me some of the guys he beat, like E.K. Franks and all these other studs. And anyway, I wanted to go through the list and ask what some of your memories are of these guys, and what kind of kids they were, and what made them so tough. So we'll start with Mike Medina. What are your memories of him, and what made him so tough?
Well, Mike was only around for a year, but he came in, and it was almost like the other guys looked up to him already, because he had credentials coming in, I guess he was there 2 years. I'm sorry. He already placed in state at 155, was in Sun Country or Kansan wrestler on one of those teams, and conference champions, EKL champion, which is pretty prestigious in that area. And so the kids know him. Plus, that was an era. I think we started the East Kansas club, I want to say Eric came in 85, 86. I think 86 is when we started the East Kansas club. So, and he was starting to come up there. So that they all knew each other through the East Kansas club.
Okay.
And he was tough. He was, man, he would get in, he would wrestle with Luttrell and those guys, because our other guys in the room just couldn't compete with him until we got Mckee in the room, and then they wrestled each other, and that was a good competition.
Yeah.
But great kid, all about team. He worked his tail off. He really worked hard, and you look at him he's a great coach down at St. James now.
Okay.
And I've watched him. I've gone down to a couple meets and watched him coach, and pretty tenacious as a coach, just like he was as a wrestler. He went to Northern Iowa to wrestle, and it didn't work out, and so but that's the way it goes. I mean, a lot of guys go to college and it doesn't work out,
Yeah, for a lot of reasons, and it's college is so freaking tough. I'm always impressed by anybody who ends up having a good college career. Like I wrestled in college a couple of years just to help pay for it, and I'm 46 now, and I just paid off my student loans a couple of years ago for 2.5 years of wrestling, for 2.5 years of school. If I would have just sucked it up and wrestled 2 more years, I wouldn't have had to pay off all that crap. But anyway, so yeah, I was shocked when Gons was telling me just how freaking good he was. So I just wanted to ask you what your memories of him were. And another guy is Colin Mckee. I kind of know Colin.
Colin was a very good wrestler. Problem was, he was right in the middle of Gons, Sonny, and Eric.
Yeah.
And he wrestled JV up until his senior year. Well, I could just say that. He wrestled JV a lot. And toward the end of his junior year, we convinced him. I wasn't happy with our 138-pounder. And I says, Colin, I think you can beat our 138-pounder. I won't say his name. I think you can beat him. And I'd much rather have you with your work ethic up there than him, who's, kind of, and that was when we had a pretty decent team. He's kind of riding the gravy train, and so Colin went from being a 19-pounder up to wrestling 138.
And did pretty well.
Yeah, he went to state and won 2 matches, and one more he'd been if we got to wrestle for 5th and 6th, he would have been in that match.
Yeah.
I mean, now they wrestle for 5th and 6th. And I look back at the number of kids we had got to that point. And that year, in 1987, I think we had 5 guys that probably would have been wrestling for 5th and 6th.
Yeah.
We had 3 guys. That was 87. Yeah. That was the year that I won't say his name, but a previous year state runner-up scored nothing for us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And anyway, it was.
Well, damn it! Now I want to know his name.
Huh? I don't throw anyone under the bus.
That's okay.
He knows who he is, and if he sees this, he'll know. And he feels as bad about it as we do. And the problem was he was the year before was 98. Well, Sonny came in. He was 98. Gons beat him at 105. He had to go 112. And so he was not a big 112-pounder. And, that was an era where kids seemed to cut a lot of weight.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty big kids at 112. There's a guy from Turner, Marvin Bingham.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
He was like 140 pounds, and that sucker got down to 105 somehow.
Yeah.
Like, what? How'd you get certified for 105? And he wrestled Gons. I think it was Gons. Just mopped up Matt with him one time. It's the only time he beat Gons, but, because we learned, okay, we're not going to get in there and try to go mano a mano. We're going to slick this guy because, and Gons could do that. Gons could wrestle, physical, or he could slick people. So, but that's the year. And I think he just kind of got to state tournament, and some of those guys who were pretty doggone big. And he lost that first round match and panicked, I think, you know.
Yeah,
How much you talk to kids and say, you're okay, you're going to be fine. You got another match,
yeah.
you know.
Well, when you've gone that far the year before, it's a real mental thing, you know. In 8th grade, I was undefeated going into state, and I lost in the quarterfinals to somebody I'd beaten a couple times. And I remember I ended up getting third, but I remember not caring. I remember being like, I don't even care if I place now. You know, like I've seen it even at the college level, you know, like D1 guys. I remember Matt McDonough, like when he got beat his senior year, I was like, he's going to end up getting beat out. And he did. And that happens sometimes, you know, it's very hard mentally to come back from that kind of thing sometimes. Speaking of
Colin was one of the kids that his senior year, he had to cut pretty hard to get to 19. And I spent a lot of time with Colin after practice, you know, doing stuff and working on stuff. And Colin was a good wrestler. He gave up a takedown when his feet stopped moving. When he would sit and freeze in position, he'd get taken down.
Yeah.
So we had a little thing where in a match, if I thought he was not moving well, I'd just say feet. And it's a little keyword for us to get your ass moving, okay? You got to create your motion. And he wasn't rated all year. He wasn't rated, and he wasn't even in the top 6 ratings.
Wow.
And he just kept coming, getting better and better and better and better. And he was a legger. Oh my God, he could ride legs so well and just grind guys. He had pots from Cape and just worn out. No takedown in the first period. And Colin escaped in the second period. It's 1-0. Okay. Third period, he just rode pots like a horse, you know. And Potts just couldn't hardly get off the mat by the time the period is over. Colin couldn't turn him, but Potts couldn't get up either.
Yeah.
So it was, and of all the state champions that I had at Miege, and this is not a slight to any of those guys that won a state championship, Colin probably worked the hardest to become a state champion of all of them. And he paid dues. If he hadn't to come to Miege, he'd have been to state for 4 years, I swear. He'd have been a 4-time qualifier and probably a multiple placer.
Yeah.
But I give him credit for staying there and staying behind those guys. And when we would find ways to move our lineup up, we'd spread those guys out against some teams that were weaker, you know, and insert Colin in somewhere, move Eric and at that time it was Eric and Sonny. Move Eric and Sonny up and wrestle them heavier weights because they could handle it. I mean, Eric, he could have wrestled up to 145 and done just fine at state tournament, I think.
Yeah.
He was very tenacious. So, but Colin really put in his time. He was a kid that I admired a lot to fight and get his one shot and take advantage of his senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. So he won that match 1-0 in the final?
1-0, yeah.
Nice.
Potts was rated number 1 all year long.
Okay. Did Colin take any losses his senior year?
What's that?
Did Colin take any losses his senior year?
Yeah, he had 5 losses.
Okay.
5 losses throughout the year, just kind of scattered here and there. Coffeyville, he got second. Where else? He got second. Maybe, let's see here. I got it right here. Where's that? Oh, it's right here. Da-da-da-da-da. He actually, wait, that was his junior year. Senior year. Where did I see he took second? He took second at Blue Springs. It was a tough tournament. Dowling was there, Blue Springs, Park Hill, East Summit. He took second somewhere else. Anyway, he lost 5 matches throughout the years. He was maybe it's 29-4, something like that.
Okay.
So, but he actually, I think early in the years where he lost his matches, and after Christmas when we were doing extra workouts together and working on little nuances of things here and there, that he kind of started putting it all together.
Yeah, I like Colin. We had a good conversation at NCA's a couple of years, and he's a good dude. We don't necessarily agree on a lot of things going on right now, but he's still a good dude. My next one coming up is that I had for you is Sonny Fight. Speaking of guys that were bigger than their weight class, he was the biggest 98-pounder in the history of wrestling.
I think he was 5'10". I'm not sure what he was at the time, but he was a tall 105 or 105 basically. He was a tall 98-pounder, and that was Kansas was weird with their certification before December 15th or something like that, or after December 15th, and then you got 5 pounds. It's like one heavy cut. Well, Sonny did an extra heavy cut to get to certified weight, and then he was still cutting pretty good to stay down at 103.
Oh, I bet.
So he was a big one. Sonny was very technical. I mean, he wasn't explosive. He was very sound, fundamentally good position. Didn't get out of position too often. Like I said, he's kind of fun to watch because he's kind of slow motion. But the one thing that's pretty quick on him, I don't know how many kids he pinned with the headlock. It would come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It'd be like he'd be walking back from the edge of the mat and just throw a headlock or something. So he was a headlock machine, and I'd say, Sonny, God damn it, we gotta get you some leg attacks. All right, why, coach? I'm pinning them. It's like, okay, dude. Okay.
Yeah. So, if you're a headlocker, and I watch wrestling all the time, and I know that you can't hit him on the best guys at least more than once. But man, there's so many times where I'm like, it's right there. You just do it. Like when a guy's digging underhooks or overhooks or anything, I see it all the time. I'm like, man, just because I can throw anybody just about anybody at least one time, and you can if that's your thing. Like Gons was great at it too.
Yeah, Gons was good, great headlock. One of the best headlocks I ever seen in my life was thrown by Gons in the finals. Was your sophomore year when he wrestled Paisley? Yeah, his sophomore year when he wrestled Paisley in finals. Paisley's feet almost touched the top of the Coliseum. He hit that so hard, and Paisley goes over, boom. I knew it was over because Gons was like, and he hit that headlock on Paisley and pinned him. Paisley was one of the only guys that beat him that year. I think it's his one loss he had that year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and going back to Sonny, he's one of those guys that was returning state champion and then lost in the first round and came back and got fourth.
Yeah.
And he was pretty candid about it. He goes, I went up in the stands and just bawled like a baby, because that's hard on you, man. Coming back to defending state champ and then to get pinned like that, or not pinned. He didn't get pinned, but he
got beat.
Yeah. By an Arc City kid who, gosh, I would never want to run into an Arc City kid in the first round of a tournament. Everybody knows the first round is the hardest round of the tournament a lot of times. So yeah, I remember that name too, Jace Brew, and
yeah,
that was a good little era there with Gons and Sonny and Kevin Stewart and Aiken and Marvin Bingham and Brian Roberts. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on.
I know. I was looking at stuff last night, and it's like, wow! It's just amazing how much talent there was right there in that window.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Sonny was never out of a match. He could get back in a match, just slither his way back in. It's like, here comes Sonny.
Yeah.
And he's long and lanky no matter what weight class he was wrestling.
Yeah.
So he was a good dude though. I mean, he's up here in Fridley, which is in the cities, and I was coaching at Hopkins, which is in the cities. And I went to Fridley we go to the Fridley tournament every year, and I'm in the Fridley tournament and just kind of watching kids. And I walk across the gym and I hear, Coach Price. So I turn around, Sonny's working a table at the Fridley tournament. So I come to find out he lives up there, and he helped the Fridley kids program, stuff like that. So we stay in touch all the time, and we've taken some trips down to Kansas to watch wrestling and watch Eric's teams and Mike's teams compete. Cool. And so, yeah, he's a good dude. And the funny part is, Sonny is probably one of the brightest wrestlers academically we had. He's an engineer for Target right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, and he's a structural engineer, so
yes,
be some dumbass and do that.
No. Just have to be a dumbass to be a wrestling coach for 38 years. No, Sonny's very intelligent, and his boys are the same way. His two boys wrestled at Fridley, and I had kids that competed against both these boys, and we beat him all the time. But anyway, they were good wrestlers, and he was very bright kids. One went to Naval Academy, and the other one is, I don't know what he is, but he's an engineer also. So he's very intelligent, and he does they did a great job when they were wrestling, and they're just good family all the way around. So, and I stay in touch with them a lot.
Speaking of smart kids, that leads me to my next guy, which is Gons Medina. He's also a super smart person, and he only won one state title, but if the wind had blown a different way, he could have been a four-timer. I mean, he barely lost as a freshman. He won as a sophomore. He got beat as a junior, but he probably shouldn't have. And then his senior year, he's undefeated and gets mono. I mean, he's a few points away and some bad luck from being a four-time state champ,
Yeah, he was his freshman year. I forget who he lost to.
Kevin Stewart, I believe.
Oh yeah, Stewart. They went back and forth. Earlier in the year, they tied at the duel, and then Kevin beat him in the section finals, and those were his two losses there. And then he loses to him in the state finals.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then his junior year, Dant Allison from Great Bend, he pinned at the Coffeyville finals of the Coffeyville tournament. Well, Dant Allison did I saw Gons on your broadcast talking about how he weighed about 142 and looked pregnant, which he did. It was like, I kept telling those guys to stop eating, but it was like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so he pinned Dant Allison. Well, Dant Allison had a pretty good strategy going into the finals. I bet his chest was no more than a foot off the mat the whole match. He said, I'm not going to stand up with him. And Gons get on the underhook and try to jack him up. And Gons had good leg shots too. Guy like that, we kept telling him to snap him in front, head him, and go behind. And Gons was determined he was going to throw him and pin him like he did Paisley the year before, Yeah. And then his senior year, that was the biggest heartbreak of all. I mean, he was 21-0 with 19 pins. Yeah. My biggest task with him was I had to tell him, Gons, you got to wrestle into the third period before you pin him, okay? You can't pin him in the first period because you got to build up your, match stamina. But then he got mono, and that was really a tough thing for him and a tough thing for the team. And it took a lot of wind out of the whole team. Yeah. When your stud is sidelined, they're all going, uh-oh, now what do we do? Yeah. And that's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back that year,
Yeah, I remember Coach Leonard, my high school coach, his son Travis was a 2-time state champ and a 4-time placer, and only lost, I think, 5 to 7 times in high school, and most of them were his freshman year. I mean, he took 2 losses in the last 3 years. Anyway, he was freaking good. And I remember Coach Leonard telling him, if you lose, Travis, this whole team will fold, you know? And what you just said reminded me of that. That sometimes if your best guy goes out, the whole team's like, screw it then, you know?
Yeah, we had West Waterloo from Iowa come in when we were pretty good. And I think that was I want to say that was the 88 team. And that was that the year Eric hurt his ankle.
I believe
it was. I think he hurt his ankle that year.
Senior year, so that was 89.
Was it 89?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, he was senior year then. And he got hurt against this kid, stud. He's a tough kid from Waterloo, but he hurt his ankle. And when he initially hurt his ankle, the trainer went out there and she said he shouldn't continue. And I said, okay, you got the call. You know, I want him for the rest of the year. I don't want him, hobbled. Well, he wanted to continue wrestling, and John wanted him to continue wrestling. And I said, okay, we're going to let you go one time. If you pull up lame again, okay, you're done. And he pulled up lame again, and we took him out. But that took the wind out of our sails for that duel. A lot of kids were like, oh, shoot, Eric just got beat. It's like, yeah, it's not your match. So you got to get out there and do your job. We ended up losing that duel. So
dude, I think I remember that guy's name. Was it Andy Showalter?
Showalter, yeah.
Yeah.
Andy Showalter.
I don't know how I remember this shit.
Well, Eric went to college, and Andy wrestled at Northern Iowa, and Eric was at Iowa State, and Eric just thrashed him. I think Eric just punished him because he hurt him at when he was in high school. But
yeah, Aiken was one of those guys. If you beat him, you better move up a weight class or
move out of the state.
Move out of the state or quit wrestling and just live off it, because he was going to kick your ass the next time.
Oh, he was, yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to him in just a second, but what else do you remember about Gons? Because
Gons was he's a great kid. When I remember him one time talking about, Coach, were you happy when my brother came to me? He says, yeah, I was really happy. He said, what about me? I says, heck yes, guys, it was a package deal. So he was a great kid. He's always a thinker. He's thinking about everything all the time. He had a baseball card business in high school. He probably made more money on his baseball card business than I made teaching. But he was always telling me, yeah, I sold 2,000 of these cards today and made blah, 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 blah amount. And it's like, okay. But he was always an entrepreneur. And he's always not only entrepreneur off the mat, but on the mat too. He's always looking for an angle. Yeah. And he was, like I said, he's a thinker. He'd always look at technique and study technique. And, he was probably one of the most studious guys in that respect that I've had as a wrestler. Yeah. So, and I stay in touch with him quite a bit. And man, he's got a great, successful business. And I love the kid. I mean, he's quite a guy.
Yeah, he messages me all the time with ideas for things I can do, and I'm like, sometimes I want to go, you work harder on my career than I do.
That's what I said. He's a thinker. He's always looking for an angle,
Yeah, good dude. I really like Gons. He helped me get in with Rockfin. I'm a creator on there, or whatever now. Yeah. That was because of Gons, and so yeah, I think very highly of Gons Medina, and he had a good college career too. D1 is very tough, and he made it to the national tournament and started all 4 years, and so that's nothing to sneeze at.
No.
Yeah.
Just like you said, making it through a college program,
especially D1.
is pretty admirable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
To go to college and qualify for nationals is even more admirable.
Yeah.
And Gons won a couple matches at nationals too. So I
Yeah.
think his 1 year he's pretty close to getting to AA.
I don't remember, but I know that he drew Jerry Abbas in the first round, which is not who you want to draw in the first round.
No.
All right. Well, then that leads me into the last guy, and the guy that like I said, when I first started wrestling, Eric was the one kid on our team that had won a kid state title, and he won like 4 in a row, and then he went to high school, and he was always the only time you saw Eric during the year was at sub-district, district, and state, because the rest of the year John had him going to all these high-level tournaments, even as a small kid. And looking back on it, and it's easy to be an adult and look back on things you wish you would have done, but I wish I would have found a way to be around the Aikens more, because John would have helped us out and made sure because my brother especially was super talented. Speaking of my brother and Eric, my brother's sophomore year, he got beat by Landon Richardson 10-8 in that tournament that Eric lost to Landon. And
Schlegel?
Yeah, Schlegel. And my brother, God bless him, never lost a match legitimately. He always got screwed in his eyes, So I wasn't there to see it, but he was like, I got screwed. I should be in the finals against Aiken. And it was 10-8. So obviously it was a good match. But they didn't get to wrestle in that tournament. And I'm not saying my brother would have beaten Eric, but if he ever had a chance to, because Eric had a hurt ankle at the time, that would have been the time that he could have maybe had a chance to get him. And I remember I was there. I remember Eric got beat 10-5, and I remember how mad John was after the match, and
John wasn't mad at Eric. John was mad at me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because we had held Eric out of several events. And this happened before Christmas with the injury against Waterloo West. And we held him out of a couple events, and it was like a 3 to 4 week period of time there where he didn't compete. And we had a really good trainer, and Sue Tremonti, and she's very good with, injuries. And I trusted everything she said. And I consulted with her, and she, first of all, she said, no, I don't think you should wrestle. I don't think you wrestle. She said, and then he got back in the practice room, and he was practicing. And, we were kind of limiting practice with him too a little bit. And it got to the point where I said, he's looking pretty good. What do you think? She said, I think he can go. And I said, okay. I said, Eric, I want you to wrestle, the Schlegel tournament. And this was like on Monday. So he had time to get the mental going. That night, John called me and was really upset. And I said, John, our trainer said he's ready to go. I said, he might not be 100%, but and the big thing was, I think it was the Newton tournament the next weekend after Schlegel that wanted to be ready for. And I said, if we go into the Newton tournament with no competition, not knowing where we're at, I said, I think it's not going to be a good deal. I think, and our trainer is feeling confident that Eric's ready to go. He needs to tape it, obviously, but he's ready to go. And he was really upset with me. And I'll take the heat because I was the one that pushed Eric to get back. And trainer said, I think he's ready. And I said, okay. And I pushed him to get back because I knew Newton the next week was more important. I mean, he lost to Landon Richardson, who he thumped all the time in the summertime and every other time he ever wrestled him. And Landon beat him by a few points. Big deal. I know it. Look back on it now, it was a big deal. Back then, it was like, oh, I got another loss it'll be 4 losses rather than 3 in my career, And it's like, not that big a deal. But we had to get a measuring stick out there to see if you were ready to go for the bigger tournament in Newton. And he was ready to go. After the tournament, the ankle, he kind of favored it, but the ankle never got injured during the tournament or anything. Next week, full practice. And that one loss probably put a fire up his butt, for the rest of the year. And like you said, when Eric loses, look out. He just becomes, I think that week he tore up everybody in the practice room. I don't know if there's a weight class that was exempt from Eric that week. So, and he was mad at me, and it's okay. I as a coach, you can't worry if a kid gets mad at you, because you got to believe that you're making the right decisions, which are in the best interest of the kid and the team. So, and so that was John was really upset with me, and I feel bad that John got that upset, but everything worked out.
Yeah.
In the end, he went to Coffeyville, pinned his way through the tournament, and so next week everything was peachy keen again.
Yeah. I do remember John being upset. I didn't know it was at you, but I remember him screaming, "I told you weren't ready!" And Eric went out and hit his arm on the wall and on the way out, and I'm just like 7th grade or something. I'm like, Eric Aiken got beat. The whole freaking place was like that.
Yeah.
Anderson was no slouch. The guy he got 3rd the year before and went all the way to the finals undefeated, and then lost to Maurice Gatewood, who was a sophomore, which I couldn't understand, even though Maurice was very tough, but I didn't expect him to beat Landon Richardson. And I wish I had that match with my brother on tape with Landon and Jim, because Jimmy could flat out wrestle, man. He only wrestled I think 17 matches total in high school because he had eligibility issues and we had a weird home life and blah, blah, blah. But I think he really had some special talent. So what kind of personality was Eric?
Eric was the spark during his years there. He was the what's the mafia captain? He was the godfather for the team. He had a little ornery streak in him all the time. One time we're setting up for we always had a couple big tournaments at Hopkins, which were like a JV tournament with every team in the metro area sending kids, and a freshman tournament the same. It was a huge tournament, and we set up the night before and had practice, and the varsity was going somewhere and the JV was staying at home for the JV tournament, because that's when it used to be a varsity tournament one place, JV at another, or something like that. They never did JV and varsity the same tournaments. Anyway, he was like, "I'm not setting up mats." I said, "Yes, you are. You're setting up mats." And he storms out of the gym, and I went and got him and drug him back in the gym and said, "Help set up the mats." And he left again, and I said, I forget who was it. I said, "You better go get him, because if he doesn't come back, he's not wrestling tomorrow. And you guys know I'm a man of my word, and I don't care who you are." That one state tournament that we lost to, first one, Capon, when we lost to Capon, one of the kids got sent home to the state tournament. Because I said, "This is the rules. You break the rules, I'm calling your parents and they're coming to get you." Well, at 2:00 in the morning, when I was roaming the hallways, he was roaming the hallways and called the parents and said, "Come and get him." They said, "No." I said, "Come and get him." I said, "I told all the parents before a state tournament, if their kids broke the rules of state tournament, they're going to get sent home and you're going to have to come and get them." So I sent him home, and there was a lot of people who were upset with me about that one too, but never had another incident at state tournament.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, here's the line right there. You stay on this side of the line. Don't go on that side of the line. We're okay." So, and I guess I just have principles and rules, and this is what you're going to do, and that's my expectations.
Yeah, it'd be a hard thing as a coach, to have a certain set of rules, and then one of your best guys break them, and you're like, shit.
Yeah, well, you got to. That's the person you got to stand on the most.
Dead price.
It's my wife. I'll ignore her.
Well,
But yeah, it's yeah. And my son wrestled for me up here, and that might have been a good thing and a bad thing both. But he was always held to, and he said, "You always held me to a different standard." I said, "Yeah, I did." I said, "Because if I would have ever shown you any favoritism whatsoever, the whole house would have fallen down." I said, "You were the foundation for our teams. So, you know, I can't crumble the foundation. You gotta, you know." And he understood, in high school it was a little hard on him sometimes, but he's a heck of a kid now, heck of a man now. And he always said, "Well, thanks, Dad." And I appreciate that later, but just the same. But Eric he's a great kid too. He's fun. He brought energy to the room. Like I said, he was the guy. He was the ringleader. He was a guy. If he would have told everybody we're going to go run 20 miles, everybody would have been right behind him.
yeah,
They'd have been right behind him. And it didn't matter if it was the littlest guy on the team to the biggest guy on the team. They were going to be right behind Eric.
yeah,
I mean, they saw how hard he worked. He worked hard. And he probably worked harder in the summertime sometimes than he did during the year. And he had to work harder in the summer because of the caliber wrestler he was competing against week in and week out. We would travel to the Rocky Mountain Nationals and the Southeastern Nationals and Northern Plains and wrestle all those tournaments. Like we came up to Mount Vernon and wrestled in a tournament at what's this, Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa. And we ran into a couple of guys named Terry and Tom Brands.
okay,
And it's the first introduction we had to Terry and Tom Brands. It's like, and Eric got the heck beat out of him. And it's like, who the heck are, and that was physical. The Brands were physical even then. It's like, who the heck are these kids? No one's ever handled Eric like that. Well, story is down the road, where they were. But he was never afraid of competition. Didn't like to lose. And he was very good at helping other kids. The kids that weren't very good, he was always helping them out when he could. Like I said, he was a spark plug for our team for the 4 years he was there. And you could tell when he left in 89, the next year, there's the kind of, you walked in the practice room and it was like Gons was there, but it's like everyone was like almost looking around like, where's Eric? And you kind of lost your spark plug, and it's a little different atmosphere.
yeah,
So, and is one, if you're lucky enough to be a coach and get somebody like that, you just ride their coattails and do the best you can with helping them out as much as you can, because they're getting coached by all the college coaches and all the Krameyer, who was a national place winner in college. Him and Eric were like this. They worked out hard together, and so he had a lot of good other coaches too. It's in this day and age, I don't think there's any kid that gets coached by one coach anymore. Yeah. They go to camps, they go to clinics, they wrestle for Team Kansas. They wrestle at, I guess there's a regional training center now in Kansas City. Is that right?
I don't know, but that's cool.
There's some kind of regional training center there put together by, it's down in the Olathe area. I forget what it's called, some regional training center. So they have those all over the place now. So, your kids are getting coached by everybody. And that was one thing, he couldn't have an ego about. I coached Eric Aiken to be what he is. And I didn't. I mean, I helped, and I'll say that I helped. And same way with Gons Medina and Colin Mckee and Tim McKee and Mike Medina and Brian Pate, who you don't even know, Tony Hammond and all these guys that, they got coached by other people too. And so it's a conglomeration, and you got to accept that as a coach and say, okay, I'm glad he could pick up this from this person and he pick up this from this person. He picked this up from me, and he's put them all together in his little satchel of, technique, and here he goes. So you gotta check your ego at the door a little bit as a coach, and I kind of saw myself at Miege as a head coach, obviously, but I was just trying to form it all into a nice little ball, and stuff flying off this way. You have to go out and grab it and bring it back, and keeping the pieces together. And that was a full-time job,
Right.
trying to keep some of them academically eligible, and that was where, all right, we had Charlie Pierce and Bob Van Maren were great teachers, and they were great with keeping our kids' academics, on the forefront as to got to work on this, got to work on this, got to work on this. So, and so it was like I said, it's a team effort. It's not a one man does it all kind of deal, and you realize that after you're past where you're at, and you look back and say, yeah, if I hadn't had so and so there to help and do this and do that, and temper Eric when I've drug him back into the gym and and that kind of stuff. And it's like it's a team effort, and you got to play to everybody's strengths and put it all together in a nice little package to be successful.
Yeah, everyone that I've had on here that knows Eric, always they're even like the Olympians, they're always like, that dude was a different breed of cat. Did he ever give you any headaches?
I took a full bottle of ibuprofen every day.
Yeah.
No, he was ornery. It's like I took a lot of heat from our AD for our kids. And we were a Catholic school and blah, 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 And every year on my evaluation, there would always be something there like your wrestlers need to be a little more Christian, or you need to have a little more control over your wrestlers, or something to that respect. And it's like, I said, okay, yeah, I'll do my best. Da, da, da. But tell you the truth, I wanted them to have a little edge.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be a little chippy. I wanted them to be in the school, walk around with a little attitude that you mess with me, I'm going to mess you up, And so it was, I took the heat. I didn't care. It's like they weren't going to fire me over it. It's like, so they had to find something, And so it's like your team needs to display a little more Christian values or whatever. It's like, we're good people. I mean, we kicked the crap out of people. And when it got competitive and people got in our face, and I mean, I remember the Blue Valley duel. What year was it? It must have been it was the year Mike came. So it was his junior year. So that would have been the 87. Yeah, the 87 year. We wrestled Blue Valley at Bonner, and it was fireworks from the word go. Blue Valley was PO'd about the Medinas coming there and everything, and it was like, you remember Kenny Blancardi?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Kenny got DQ'd because he down the bottom, and he's on the whistle. He just goes, just throws an elbow just like that right in our kid's face. And the ref blew the whistle and DQ'd him right there. Oh, the lid came off right there. It was like parents coming out of the stands, and they threw parents out of the duel. And it's like, who was Carl? Was it maybe Carl Zorzak was the referee?
Yeah.
Carl was a West guy.
Yeah.
Shawnee Mission West guy. And he was a great guy. And he called Lindsay and I in and said, get control of this or it's over, And so we, did the best we could, but the matches were tough and physical and we beat them, but it was a heck of a duel. And it's one of the most exciting, and I thought it was fun myself to get all fired up like that. The crowd was fired up. People were screaming. And I mean, the matches were just like, pow, 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 just hammering on each other. And it's just like, it was great, I thought.
Yeah.
And that was one that after I got back to school, I got Mr. Our AD, I'm not going to say his name. He called me the office and said, we got to get this under control.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. Walked out and said, I'm not going to do a thing.
Yeah.
So
did Eric ever, besides his freshman year when he lost to Corey Jones, did he have any trouble at state with anybody ever?
No. The funny story about Corey Jones is that year Corey beat him 10-3 or something like that, or something in the finals.
Yeah.
And that summer, Eric said, I'm going to make him cry in freestyle. And he did. He was so brutal with Corey Jones. He made Corey cry. And Corey was never the same, really, after Eric just punished him that summer. And Corey didn't want to wrestle Eric.
He pinned him, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, after he brutally beat him.
Yeah.
He just, and Eric was, like you said, Eric was, if you beat Eric, his next time you wrestle him was going to be no fun. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he ended up being as great as he was, in my opinion, because he was just that guy. Like, I've told this story a few times, but there was a guy named Eddie Lee, and Eddie beat Eric 7-0 one, and Eric probably gets tired of me bringing this up because I bring it up almost every time, but Eddie Lee beat Eric 7-0, and then the very next week he tech-falled him and beat him 12-0. And I remember thinking, like, who the hell is this guy? Like, Eddie Lee had this long black hair, and he was just a freaking rock star out there. And Eric ended up beating him. And, I mean, he handled him. I mean, I was just in awe of Eddie Lee, who I think he got killed in a car wreck. But it didn't matter who it was or how bad they beat him or whatever. Eventually, if Eric wrestled that guy enough, he was going to beat him. I remember Kevin Clem telling me a story about how Eric's freshman year, he couldn't score a point on, I think it was Doug Weiland at Iowa State. And by the end of the year, he was hurting that kid. Like, he didn't even want to wrestle him. And that's why were you surprised at all that he had all the success he did post high school?
No, he was driven. He didn't quite get where he wanted to be, which was the Olympics. I mean, he was all through high school. He says, Coach, I'm gonna go to the Olympics. I'm gonna win the Olympics. I said, I think you will. He was second to Sammy, and who else? He was a 2-time alternate, right?
Yep. Yeah. He got about as close as you could possibly get to making a team without actually making it. He lost to Ellie in one of them and Sammy Henson in the other one, but he did make a world team. He made a world team at the cadet, junior, and senior level, which is pretty dang impressive. And I was saying this to somebody. I mean, I remember growing up, he got second a lot, and at those high level tournaments, it'd be like, how they can do it. It was always, I mean, obviously he won a lot of tournaments too, but he just had that kind of career, where he got second in the Olympic trials and second in NCAAs, and it really opened my eyes to how tough Division I was. When I would look at the paper and be all excited and be like, Aiken got beat again. Like, how the hell does that happen, But D1 is nothing to sneeze at, man. Those dudes are so freaking good, especially back then when you couldn't scout and, there wasn't the stuff there is today. And, back then it seemed like freshmen just didn't do well. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It's changed a lot. I mean, it was. Now this technique is just awesome. I mean, sit and watch a college match, and these kids are pulling off the scrambles they do, and all that. It's just, it's just awesome to watch. And I would say the era Eric wrestled, it was more hard nosed physical type wrestling. I mean, he wrestled in the ear with Brands and Zapital and all those guys from Iowa that were just physical horses. So
Yeah.
she won't give up, will she?
Well, I hope it's not an emergency. I can let you
It's
go.
not an emergency. She just got off work.
Okay.
But yeah, Eric was always, he was driven, and he got really the summertime. He didn't cut much weight his senior year. He wrestled what 130.
Yeah.
Wrestled 130, and that summer he wrestled the 114 and a half at juniors. You know,
Yeah.
it's like wow.
Yeah.
So he didn't have to cut weight, and that helped our team out a lot because, you know, we could push him clear to 35 or 40 if we needed to. And so, I mean, we would, I think there's one instance we wrestled a duel where we left Sonny at 35 and moved Eric up to 40. I think we could, no, I can't remember. I think we could still do that. He'd go 2 weight classes above. But anyway, he wrestled up several times for us. And so we could insert Colin in the lineup too. So it just made us a little better.
Yeah, that was something else I always admired about him, and you touched on it. He wasn't afraid of anybody. He didn't care if you know, I mean, obviously he cared if he got beat, but he was all about getting better all the time. You know, no matter if he just didn't care. He would headhunt everybody, especially during the summer. You know, and a lot of that came from John. I remember going to a tournament, freestyle tournament, and John talking about, I hope Corey Jones is here. I really want you to wrestle him. And you know, Corey was 3 or 4 years older than Eric. I think he was a senior, wasn't he, when Eric was a freshman?
Yeah, he was. I think he was 2 years older. Eric was a freshman, and Corey was a junior, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, and that's the one thing. And John always took Eric to the tough tournaments, and it's like after you wrestle the tournaments you wrestle in the summertime, coming back and wrestling a high school tournament is like, you know,
Yeah.
you know, these kids. There's 8 kids in the bracket, and 7 of them didn't do anything this summer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to punish some of those kids.
Yeah, I came across a bracket not too long ago, and it was when I was like 12, and there were 4 kids in the bracket, and every one of them ended up winning high school state, and it was from a freestyle bracket. And I'm like, well, that's, you know, that just goes to show you right there how beneficial it is, and it's, you know, not quite as much about winning in the summer so much as it is just getting better. And
Yeah.
that's what I always admired about Aiken and all those guys, Sonny and Gons. I really looked up to all those guys when I was a kid, and they're all great dudes now. I'll let you get out of here, but I did want to ask.
Well, there's one more kid you need to put in there. That's Tim Mckee.
Okay.
Tim came to us as a senior because Colin came, and Tim wanted so badly to be on a good team. He had come from Sumner Academy, and they hadn't fared real well over the years. And he wanted to come to the team so badly. And like I said, that year he had to go up to 185 because Mike certified at 67. And he kind of got a short end of a stick there a little bit from that respect. But, you know, we wrestled off. We did everything we had to do, you know, and Tim accepted it. And, you know, he was a great kid. He was 185 pounder, weighed about 180 pounds. Tall, lanky, and he got 3rd at state that year. And like I said, if he'd have been at 67 and Mike at 55, they both would have been in the finals, and been a different story. I think, of course, if the bear hadn't stopped shit in the woods either, it wouldn't happen. But anyway, if ands or buts were candy and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day.
Right.
So he's a great kid, and he's gone on. He went on to wrestle at Southwest Missouri, which is now Missouri State, and he's the president of Olathe. What is it? I want to say Olathe Business Bureau or something. Something Olathe, pretty big dog down there.
Okay.
So he's pretty good, and he was another leg rider. McKees were leg riders, and he was a good kid, and I really enjoyed coaching him because he always was, pretty gracious about everything. Just happy to be there and be part of that team, and I feel a little badly for him that he had to wrestle 185, But yeah, so that was a great time. I sometimes look back and think maybe I should have stayed, but nobody really knows this. But in 1980, after the 1980, 88, 89 year, Aquinas was opening the next year, and they were draining off a bunch of our kids from the southern Kansas City area, and Miege's enrollment was going down pretty sharply, and I got reduced. I was actually let go for a period of time, and then Lenny Molman, who was our AD and Phi Ed teacher at the time, and I was teaching Phi Ed and driver ed, he retired and went back to the public schools. And I said, Lenny, why are you going back to public schools? You've been teaching here for like 28 years. He goes, yep. I said, why are you doing that? He goes, retirement. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you know how much I'm getting for retirement each month from the Catholic school system? I go, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000. He says, try about $1,000 a month.
Wow.
He said, you can't live on $1,000 a month. And right there, I said to myself, got to kind of watch after yourself a little bit, because they're going to drop you the first chance they get, And so next year I had this opportunity in Minnesota, which didn't pan out like I wanted it to, but retirement's good.
Yeah.
So.
Well, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, who is in Kansas, because in Kansas is my question, who was the best high school wrestler you ever saw? Was it Eric or was it someone else?
Well, I'm going to have to be a little selfish to say Eric was probably the best one.
Okay.
I saw a lot of good wrestlers. E.K. Franks was a real good one. I took a team in 1988 on a culture exchange trip out through Oregon, Washington, up into Canada. We wrestled against Oregon and wrestled a team in Washington. We ended up wrestling a tournament in Canada, and then came back down to Oregon. And when all said and done, between the Oregon team and the Kansas team, I think there were 15 Division I wrestlers on that team.
Wow.
As it was just unbelievable. I mean, Eric and E.K. Franks, and I can't name them all. I'd have to look at my journal for that. But for Oregon, is Bobby Janice, who went to Arizona State and unfortunately committed suicide there. But there's kids like that through Oregon all the time, and I didn't realize at the time, and it was a pretty cool duel because it came out pretty even. I think we won barely, but anyway, you got back, and that years later you start looking, hey, that kid was on that Oregon team, and that kid was on that Oregon team, and that kid was on the Oregon team. You're going, wow, they were better than I thought they were.
Yeah.
But that was a fun trip, and we went up to wrestle at Simon Fraser University.
Okay.
We stayed up there. But
Well, I really enjoyed talking to you. I could probably keep you on here all day, but I got to get out of here. And but I just wanted to talk to you because you had some great teams, and I'm always curious what a coach's perspective is on some of those guys that I looked up to. And like I said, I could talk to you all day, and I hope I didn't shortchange any of the people that I wanted to talk about because we talked so much about Eric. But I've always just been super intrigued by him since I was a little kid. And I was a big stats guy. Like, I always knew who beat who, and I tried to keep up on all that stuff. And Eric and Gons and Sonny were the ones that wrestled the most in the summertime. And I just looked up to them. I thought they were all cool, and
they were.
Yeah, yeah. And especially Eric, he was just a cool cat, And I remember my brother telling me the story of him coming into the Schlegel tournament in the locker room, and he had like a boombox playing like Guns N' Roses, and I just thought that was like rock star shit, for back then. He was just so like cocky, like I'll wrestle anybody and I'll kick their ass. And
Can I tell you one more story?
Yeah, please do.
We're at Bonner Springs, and I think it's a section tournament, and this is how ornery my team guys were. And we had a guy 185 pounder, anyway, he was a really good kid, but he's a little gullible. Okay. And you know what the impossible sit-up is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, they convince him that it's an impossible sit-up. And so, he lay him down on the ground and put the towel across his eyes, and our heavyweight Carl Scavuzzo drops his drawers and puts his buns right above his face, and our other guy comes right up into his butt. And we're out in the gym, and we're sitting there talking. It's kind of between sessions, and all of a sudden, wrestlers just flying out of the locker room, running across the gym. It's like, because our 85 pounder was out to kill him. And so it was just sitting out there in the gym, and all of a sudden there's like 40 kids just storming out of the locker room, just like. And I said, "Oh God, what do my kids do now?" But they do little things like that. They were good kids, though.
Yeah, they were all great guys, and like I said, if it wasn't for those Arc City teams, you would have won a couple state titles because, man, those Arc City teams were just freaking ridiculous.
Well, we lost one by 10 points and one by 8 points, and missed fourth by a half point. Missed second by the third year we got third. We missed second by 8 points or something like that. So we're right there, and it goes back to we had our studs did what they had to do.
Yeah,
we just didn't get the help. We didn't win those matches on the backside. That you didn't have to win many. You had to win 2 or 3 more matches in all those different situations, and we're one place up on all those.
Yeah,
three more matches. I mean, the year we got second in 87. Yeah, 87. Our heavyweight lost in the first round to Capon Kid, who went on to score points, and that would have been enough to put us flip-flopped with Capon.
Yeah. My senior year, we took 12 to state, 11 or 12, and 4 of us placed, 3 of us made the finals, and we had 7 guys that lost in the match to go on to place. And one of them went 1 and 2, and everyone else went 2 and 2. And if just one of those guys could have won for us, we would have won state that year as a team. And man, I mean, and they were all like 1-point matches. It was just like, damn it,
If ends and butts were candy and nuts.
Yeah. Which will lead me to my last question. I have to ask you this: do you remember Coach Leonard?
Yes, I do.
Tough son of a bitch, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He ran a real solid, hard program.
Oh, we were so scared of him.
I remember when I first got there, the other coach, Jerry Skackle.
Yeah, he's my first.
Okay. He's a nice guy, but
Yeah.
kind of let kids run things, I guess.
Probably.
Like.
Yeah.
What's that?
He was probably too nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it changed when was it Bill?
Bill, yeah.
Yeah, Bill. When he changed, it changed a lot. And you could tell because the kids were more disciplined and they evidently the practices were a lot more rigid than what they were.
We were so scared of him, and he was the moodiest man on the planet. If you came into practice and Coach Leonard was in a good mood, people would be like, I remember the other wrestlers being like, he's in a good mood today. And I'm like, that's not good, dude. That means by the end of practice, he is going to be pissed off about something. And if he came in there mad at us, by the end of the practice, he was cutting shit out and joking around with us and all that. And it was like clockwork. I'm like, I have never met a moodier dude in my whole life. And no one on our team seemed to get it. I'm like, dude, this isn't good that he's happy right now. That means we're all screwed by the end of this practice. And, but I wish he was alive today because I would love to have him on here and talk to him. And because I was so scared of him, I could barely even talk to the man. He intimidated me so much because you just did not want to disappoint him. And he's the guy that taught me above everything else, no matter what happens to you, it's ultimately an excuse. Like bad things happen, and what are you going to do about it? And that seems cold in a lot of ways, but it's also when it comes down to it, what are you going to do about it? Like I know so and so died, or this happened, or that happened, and that sucks. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah,
and
it's just the fact of life.
Yeah, he taught me that above anyone else, and so God rest his soul. And so if there's nothing else you'd like to say, I'll let you get out of here. But is there anything you want to say?
I'm just going to say thank you. It was a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Yeah, I had fun talking to you.
My wife was like, oh, you're going to do reminiscing of the old days. I said, yep, sure am.
I tell people all the time, that's what I love about this podcast is wrestlers and coaches, and they don't get to tell their stories, not really. And so this gives people a way to do that and get to talk about it. And some of these guys were so freaking good, and people just have to wonder what happened to them. And, I've had Olympians and D1 champs and all that stuff, but my favorite ones are the guys that I kind of knew or just knew from a distance, like Mccracken and Brian Roberts and all those guys that I looked up to, but I didn't really know much about what went on at their school and everything else. And, so I really appreciate you talking to me today. It was a pleasure, and I'll let you know when it's up and you can share it.
Thank you very much.
You bet, buddy. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks.
Care. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Al Price, that guy coached some total Kansas legends and studs, and I really enjoyed talking to him. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you're still listening to this, I will be headlining the Columbus Funny Bone February 27th. It's a great room. I'm really looking forward to it. And youtube.com/Tim Gaither is all my comedy clips. And I don't know if I'm going to start putting my podcast back on YouTube or not, but if I don't, it'll be on rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com. The wrestling podcasts are almost all free and helps the sport of wrestling and helps my family a little bit. And I really enjoy doing it. So make sure you check them out and share them if you would. And yeah, I believe that's it. February 27th, I'll be headlining the Funny Bone. Looking forward to it. So get your tickets at timgaithercomedy.com or the Columbus Funny Bone website. And that's it. All right. God bless all of you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. Haven't done one in a minute. Make sure you go to Making It Happen, MACANIthappen.com. Help out little Bo Macon and his family. And with that, I am done. So goodbye. God bless all of you. Do us both a favor and click on that subscribe button.